Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us. We will begin shortly. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us. We have had several virtual workshops, and sometimes technology is not always the easiest to use. So please be patient as we go through this workshop tonight. And we know that a lot is going on in our lives right now, so please keep in mind that Ardent is always here for you, in addition to any banking or borrowing needs. If you need to ask a question during the workshop, please click the Questions tab and type in your question. The photo to the left is the screen of an iPad, and the photo to the right is the screen of a desktop. We will relay the questions to Steve and Pete during the seminar and during the Q&A session after the workshop. This workshop is also being recorded and will be available for you to view on Ardent's website within the next few days. Now let's introduce Steve Roberts. He's a Bucks County native who has spent 15 plus years as a car salesman and a sales manager at one of the largest dealerships in the country. From Matchbox cars as well as SCCA autocross racing, he has always had a love for cars and people. Therefore, it's no surprise that Steve is the car guy he is today. Pete grew up spending most of his days at car shows and sitting in a mechanic shop watching classic muscle cars being built. As time went on, he found himself working as a service specialist to pay his way through college. His passion is investing in cars and the car industry as he continued to eventually work his way up as a sales manager. And now we'll pass it off to Steve and Pete.
Okay. There we go. Hi, everybody.
How are we doing today?
Welcome to How to Drive Away your best car deal. My name's Steve Roberts, and of course you see Pete Kerlick here with me. And some of the things that we'll be going over today will be COVID-19 in the auto industry. We'll talk about how the effect that the pandemic has had on the industry and how it'll affect you. Researching car options, negotiating the do's and don'ts. That's a really important one that I hope you all listen closely to. Getting the most for your trade-in, and then receiving top dollar when you sell your car privately. Okay.
So we thought we would begin with the elephant in the room, which is COVID-19. And some of what we're going to discuss here will vary depending on your location, but we're going to speak predominantly about Pennsylvania since that's where we're located and where we do most of our operations. So the purchase process has changed quite a bit since the pandemic began. You're spending a lot less time on the dealer's property, but a lot more time communicating with them via phone, text, or email. And it has become a little bit more difficult to shop. Now, we are still seeing the effects of inventory shortages from production stoppage. So it is making things a little bit more difficult to test drive. If you do know exactly what you want, that's not quite as much of a problem. And we have seen higher prices begin to start on certain vehicles. Especially on the pre-owned market, we've seen as much as a 25 to 30% increase.
Hey, Pete, where's that impact coming from?
It's bottlenecking effect more than anything, I would say. Wouldn't you agree, Steve?
Well, yeah, to be more specific, with new car sales being down, we have an issue with the computer chips that have become a shortage, slow in production, actually shutting down some of the manufacturing plants, right? And then
Correct.
If you're not selling a new car, then the dealers aren't getting the trade-ins, thus depleting the used car inventory.
Nothing to replace it with.
Right.
What are you going to give them their car for?
So now the supply goes down, demand goes up, so does the price.
Yeah.
It's all relative, right?
I mean, just an anecdotal story to that point. I've talked to a couple of Toyota dealerships recently that won't have a Corolla on lot until July.
Right.
That's a scary concept when you usually have 50 of them.
Yeah, and I just talked to a dealership the other day too. It was the Honda Civic R-Type, and it's actually being sold for $15,000 over the MSRP, the window sticker price, folks. So some of the numbers out there right now are absolutely crazy.
And that kind of leads to my next point. They're not moving off MSRP quite as much as they once did. So it is something to keep in mind. And car incentives, they don't need to right now. You know, when you only have 3 and you don't know when the next one's coming in, why incentivize the car? You will still see rates because they want your financing as well, but that's about the extent of what we're seeing there.
Yeah. So let's take a moment, folks, and do a quick poll here. We'd like to hear a little bit from you as to where you are with the car buying process. And the more we know about you, the more we can customize our conversation today and hopefully touch the buttons that you need answered. Okay, so how comfortable do you feel purchasing a vehicle? And what we're seeing here is 33% are in the neutral spot, and more of you are uneasy and very uneasy. So I would say almost half of the people are uneasy, and I'm glad you're here because that's part of what we're going to do is to inform you and make you feel a little bit more comfortable about the whole car buying process. All right. When are you looking to purchase a vehicle? If you'll select one of those for us. Okay, so sometime this year is 75% of you, and a few of you are looking to do it as soon as possible. Awesome. Okay. So with that question, I'm going to remind you too, and we'll talk about it at the end, that you'll have the opportunity to contact us if you are in the immediate future purchasing a car. What type of vehicle are you looking to purchase? So here what we're looking for is new, used, or maybe a lease. So if you'll answer that, that'd be a big help. Everybody wants new. Well, nearly everybody. Okay, very good. So where are we here? Okay, so now let's talk about, we really need a new car, and I'd rather you not really need a new car. It's much easier and beneficial if you're not under pressure of obtaining a car as soon as possible. Evaluate your situation. Take a look at the market right now and take a look to see, if this is something in a strained market that you really need to do today, or is it something that maybe we can take a more relaxed approach to. Obviously, if your car is similar to the car in the picture here, we need to get moving with you right away and help you through the process.
And don't ever say that. Ever say that to a dealership.
Oh, no. This is conversation for us, not for the dealership.
Yeah. So once you've determined, hey, we do need a new car, I would absolutely advise you to do the research early and a lot of it. One of the first things to do is obviously start picking out cars that interest you. And from there, as far as options are concerned, determine needs compared to desires. And if you can pinpoint what you actually need and what you can be flexible on, especially with a short market like we're dealing with right now, right, you open up options and potentially savings.
For some people, do you think maybe budget should come first before shopping or?
Of course. Yeah. But on the same hand, with the market changing so much right now, how do you know your budget until you know what's out there?
Right.
So that's part of the problem, especially, we could see a 5, 10, 15% increase.
So everybody understands that when we talk about budget, we're talking about what you can afford in a payment. So some people, if you're maybe a little more strained in that area or challenged in that area, you might want to figure out what the payment is that you can handle and afford, and then apply a car within that price range of that payment. So,
speaking of budget, you're also going to then have to determine fuel economy, which is more than likely your second biggest cost with most vehicles, if you're operating it a lot.
sure.
Fueleconomy.gov is a great resource for that, and it'll allow you to get an idea of what you could expect to spend on the vehicle under normal driving conditions.
And for your driving habits.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Along with that, another big one is insurance costs. And we would advise you not to speak to just one insurance company, but multiples. And exactly. And a way to make that a lot simpler is using a broker. They can shop a multitude of different institutions for you without you having to call them all individually.
How often do you shop your insurance?
I usually do mine annually. If I remember correctly, you're about the same, right?
Yeah, me as well. I check insurance rates on my policy against others at least once a year.
Yeah, and if you change cars every time.
Yes.
Every time. And sometimes I change cars, as I know you do, less than a year. So it does happen. Another thing we like to recommend to people at this point, and not when you're sitting in a dealership, is research what your trade's worth. And there's a couple different ways to do that. KBB and NADA are great starting points. We also like using WeBuyAnyCar.com and driving up to a CarMax, let them appraise your car. And we'll talk about it in a little bit more depth later, but this also becomes very advantageous when you're sitting at the dealership.
Having that information in your back pocket with a ballpark idea of what your trade's worth, and being able to show at the dealership that you have three other prices that are most likely higher what they're first going to offer is huge.
At least when I was desking a deal.
And keep in mind too, as you check those values, we want to find out if there is a payoff, what impact is that going to have in comparison to the value?
Absolutely. And finally, especially if you're looking at used cars, and you should do this on your trade as well, take a look at the Carfaxes, okay? And there's a lot of really important information that if you skim it, you can miss, okay? And a couple things we always like to tell people to keep an eye for is a lot of title movement between state and state on a particular vehicle. That could be what's called a title wash.
This is referring to used cars only, folks.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Another thing we want to point out is inconsistent service records. Look for salvage title, frame damage, major accidents. You don't have to read the detail of the accident report to really know what that means or doesn't mean.
Airbag deployment.
Rolled down a hill, fell in an embankment, caught fire. You know what I mean? And that's dramatic intention.
Unable to drive from scene is one that always scares me.
Yeah, vehicle disabled and towed.
Yep.
That's a great one. You also want to look for flood and fire, airbag deployment, as Steve said, and mileage discrepancies. Sometimes mileage discrepancies could be a bad service writer. Sometimes it could be somebody messing with the odometer.
Or trying to mess with the mileage and make the value of the car higher. Good stuff. Okay, so one of the things that we're pretty good at, and why we do what we do, is getting that best loan rate. And here at Arden Credit Union, that's something we take a lot of pride in, being able to help our members and take them through the process with the best results. So for our members right now, we're running rates as low as 2.49 on a new auto loan. New and used auto loans. Only certain years involved. I think 2016 and newer, to be exact. We are here to assist you with a free pre-approval and give you an idea where your buying power is by having that. There's loan calculators on our website that'll help you to navigate to that magical payment and buying power. And then we're here to talk to you about it as well and help you through that process. So it gives you a lot of leverage being able to go into a dealership with a pre-approval. And, we can certainly coach you with that part as well. Okay?
So acing your dealer interaction. So we found some cars we're interested in, and it's probably time to start touching them, driving them, making sure they smell right. And we need to pick the dealerships that have the inventory we're interested in. And by no means are they all the same. Would you agree, Steve?
Absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot of really great dealerships here in the Philadelphia area. For those of you that are living in and reside or shopping in this area, there's also some dealers out there that we'd rather you didn't visit. And you know, we're not going to throw anybody under the bus, but at the same time, if we have a one-on-one conversation with you, we'll certainly share that with you.
Especially when you get to the small corner lots, as we call them, which tend to be non-brand affiliated, 20, 40, 50 cars. A lot of times they'll put really good online prices out there, and you'll go, wow, they're $3,000 less than the guy next door. Why? Until you get there and you realize they have $5,000 in fees.
Or they have a car that's been, two cars before and welded together.
And it's and it's on its fourth color.
Right. When you see a sign out front that says "Buy here, pay here," that's a problem.
Hey, Lisa, do we have a question?
Yeah, we actually do have a question that came in. So the question is, a lot of manufacturers are releasing new and updated models this year. So what are our chances of getting a reasonable deal on these latest models?
I'll take that one.
Please, go ahead, Pete.
So whenever you have new models come out or major updates or anything, they tend to be a little bit more strict anyway on their pricing of that vehicle up front because the demand's there. And we've been seeing it recently with the Kia Telluride. We're 2 model years in on the Telluride, Steve?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And they're still really not moving very far off MSRP. Not to mention, as we've started discussing, we have a production bottleneck. I don't think that's going to help pricing, sadly, and I don't want to say that, and I don't want.
What do you think about the pricing on the current year as the new models are rolling out?
If there's leftover, and that's the question: is there going to be leftover? How many 2020s do you really still see around?
In a normal environment, those the 2021s would certainly be discounted extremely as the new model comes out for 22.
Yeah.
In this market, that's not going to have a very, very strong impact.
Yeah, again, especially when it's mid-model year and you can't find a Toyota Corolla of all cars.
Mm-hmm.
That tells you a lot. So there are quite a few things we're more concerned with you not saying than necessarily sharing with the dealer once you begin interacting with them. Credit score and financing does not need to be discussed up front. Neither does how much money down. Whatever you do, do not let them start talking payment goals either.
I really need a car. Can I buy a car today?
Bottom of the list of things to ever say. Also, you don't need to discuss trade until you have sales price figured out. And I know Steve's a huge believer in that.
Right.
Also, we now have the car, specific example of the car picked. Go over it. Compare it to your research. Make sure it is as good in person as it was on paper. Do we have another question, Lisa?
Yes, we do have another question that came in. The question is there a such thing as a no haggle dealer? I've heard Hyundais are no haggle. You pay the market price.
Do you want to do this, or do you want me to?
Absolutely not. There are no haggle dealerships. They're not totally uncommon, but what happened? Let me phrase this correctly. There are some that will not haggle on the used car lots. CarSense, which is now called Car Shop, CarMax,
Auto lenders.
These are large used car lots, which are actually pretty decent in the used car market as far as used cars go.
And pricing.
And services going. I particularly like auto lenders a lot. We've had really great experience with them. But there are no haggle, and we know that going in. So, as you go through the websites and so forth, if the price doesn't make sense, if it seems too high, and sometimes it will, then you just don't go. Or if you find it out when you're there, you just don't go. As far as Hyundai, I know of quite a few Hyundai dealerships. They're more than happy to win you over by working the numbers a little bit and doing what they can financially to win your business. So that is not if somebody told you that, is not necessarily true at most of the dealers.
So an easy way to sum that up: if it's a new car and they're not willing to negotiate, they don't want your business.
Yeah, move on to the next dealer. There's plenty of other dealerships out there. So. Go find the car someplace else. So what about the demo drive, Pete?
So now we're going to begin the demo drive. The first thing I always tell people to do is minimize distractions. Tell the salesman to stop talking. Tell the kids to sit down, try to relax for a second, stop screaming, stop fighting. Make sure everything's off in the car. You want to hear what the noises the car makes, not how the salesman's telling you how nice is this leather. Okay? And that tends to be a tactic to avoid the shortcomings, is probably a nice way to say it, of the vehicle you may or may not be looking at.
Again, we're talking about used cars here.
Or new. Not all new cars are quiet.
True.
Not all new cars, when they start up, and we've seen examples of this.
Yeah.
The engine might make a weird noise. The transmission might clunk hard when you shift.
Some just have more road noise.
That's part of it. My car, because of the sports tires on it, it makes a fair amount of noise on the road. And also, at this point, go over all the features. Does the nav work the way you expect? On a used car, does the sunroof still work? And a new. I've seen new car sunroofs.
Does it not leak?
Does it not leak?
Right.
Does the power liftgate work?
Sure.
Heated seats warm up? All those things.
Check the air conditioning even in the winter. Check the heat even in the summer.
Yeah, you don't want to find out when you need it.
Absolutely.
So that's all things you definitely want to take a look at. So now we're going to start getting the car moving. Drive similarly to how you do. All dealerships will have a preferred route that they take, where it's 3 blocks of clean pavement,
all right turns,
and they know exactly what you're going to run within reason. If you drive on the highway every day, why would you not want to take this car you're looking at down the highway?
Yeah, and it's perfectly natural and a normal request for you to ask the salesman to allow you to take it to a close by highway.
Absolutely.
And get that feel. Absolutely.
Yeah, and if you do a lot of hills, take it up a hill. There are cars out there still that struggle with power.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yep.
Also, take advantage of the potholes you can find. Especially with a used car, a bad ball joint or a suspension component becomes real obvious when you hit that minor pothole. I'm not saying, find a crevice to drive it through, jump it over a curb, but you definitely want to hit a little bit of rough terrain.
Okay.
Along with that, make sure you emergency brake, and it's going to respond the way you want. And when you're back to safe space, cycle through the transmission, make sure the gears shift easily, and engage four-wheel drive if it has it. Steve, do you have any input on checking over the car as well?
Yeah, well, obviously, when we're driving a car, letting go of the wheel lightly, that's a big thing for me. I want to know if that car is going to pull to the right or left. At the same time, I'm also gonna let go of the wheel, hitting the brake, not excessively. You want to be safe, but you want to find out if the brakes are pulling.
Very true.
And feel that wheel. If you feel a shimmy in the wheel, you might have a bent rim. You might have a tire out of balance. You might have frame damage. And these are all things that if the dealership didn't take care of it prior to putting it on the lot, I don't know that I want to do business with that dealership.
It also makes me question what the cost of that repair is going to be.
Sure. Yeah, if they couldn't afford to do it, the price could be astronomical.
Yeah.
Okay.
So finally, checking over the car once you're done test driving. And there's a lot of nuance in this. And one of the biggest pieces of advice we could probably give you is use your hands, feel the paint, make sure there's no rough textures or inconsistency in the texture, and use multiple angles. Okay? If you look at a car directly at a 90 degree, there's a lot of imperfections that you may not pick up looking parallel to the vehicle, straight down the body line.
At a sharp angle.
At sharp angles.
Yep.
And you want to always look at the tires, and don't forget the old penny trick. Lincoln's head down should be covered for at least 5/30 seconds.
Which is a reasonably
good tire. It's above half-life, generally speaking.
You want to see that even tread across the tire, especially on the front. Check it to the back as well, though, because sometimes they'll rotate the tires and deceive you.
And hide it. Run your hand over the tires, too. And I know a lot of people don't want to get dirty, but run your hand over the tires. If it's grabbing your fingers and there's what's called a chop to the tire, that's not a good sign. If there's cupping where you'll feel it literally wave through, that could be a bad sign of suspension components as well. Another place we always tell people to look is in the trunk in the spare tire well. It's one of the low points inside the cabin. It's a natural place for rust, water, or any kind of mold from water exposure to build up.
Yeah, I always like to have people run their hands across the front carpet to see if there's water there. Jeep Wranglers are notorious. Well, the older
Still are.
yeah, they constantly had leaks, roof leaks. But
And at the kicker panels, because if there's a sunroof and the channels block up, the water will run right down. There's kicker panels right next to the footwells. Also, open the hood and the door jambs. Look for bolts being removed. If there's paint missing or there's heavy burring, they may have had to have replaced a component. And finally, look at bare metal components and under the vehicle. Do you see a lot of rust, a lot of oxidization? Are there oil leaks? Is the oil pan smashed up? The bottom of the car scratched up? They could all be signs of abuse from a prior owner.
okay, very good. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about how to negotiate and how to get that best price that you're hoping to acquire. So some of the tips for negotiation is to, again, I hate to harp on the same thing over and over, but be prepared. You know, you should have done your research prior to going out. You should have a pocket full of information on what your trade's worth, what the car books out at as far as what it should be sold for and so forth, and bring those findings to the dealership so that you can make those informed decisions. In many cases, the salesperson is going to come over with what they call a first pencil. That first pencil is going to show you list price. To the left side of that is going to be your payments and so forth. They're going to ask you to circle one of the payments with different amounts down and different lengths of financing. 48 months, 60 months, 72 months, so forth and so on. And they're going to say, circle the payment that fits your budget best. And please do not buy into that. Do not feed into that. And what I want you to do at this point is a little abrupt, but I want you to be bold and to take your pen or pencil and just cross those payments off and tell them you're not interested in payments, that you want to talk about a cash deal. Regardless of what you plan to do, you're going to keep the focus on the price of the car, not a payment, not any additional add-ons below the price of the car. We don't want to talk about warranty. We don't want to talk about document fees, taxes, or anything like that. We want to stick strictly to the price, and we want to cross their price off and put in the price of preferably less than what you researched. So if the car is selling for $20,000 or even $30,000, it really doesn't matter. But your research has shown that the car should be sold at $27,000 or some number less than theirs. Shoot it another $1,000 or $2,000 below that, and say this is what I'm willing to pay for the car. Cross their number off, write your number in, and say please have your manager review that number if you'd like me to buy the car. And that's how you start the negotiation process. When they come back with that number, they're going to cross your number off and give you a simple $50 discount. And this is where you say, let's cut to the chase and have your manager do a TO, which is abbreviation for a takeover. The salesperson is not authorized to discount the car in most every dealership I've ever been in. It's only the sales manager that can do it, and you might as well just cut to the chase and stop wasting time going back and forth with the salesman. That just annoys each and every one of you as it annoys me. So just get right to the point and get to the best possible price. Okay. In the end, if they're not willing to come to your number, you've got to be willing to get up and walk away from it. Okay. You can always come back. We're not there to be rude or to be abrupt or make it so that we're not welcome back. But you're certainly within your rights. This is your money. We're spending a lot of money on this vehicle. Walk away from it. If it's not the right deal structure, step away from it and go look elsewhere. If it turns out that is the best you're going to do, and you decide you want to make that move, you can always go back. They'll open their arms to you and welcome you back. So.
Lisa, I believe we have another question.
Yes, we do have another question that did come in.
Awesome.
The question is it better to have a larger or smaller down payment
I'll take that one if you don't mind. Okay, in most cases, it really doesn't matter, okay? The down payment is something that, I don't want you to introduce right away. I don't want you to introduce your trade right away. Remember, focus only on the selling price. You know, at the end of negotiations, you can say, hey, I've got a trade, and then you can also say, hey, I've got $5,000 I want to put down, and that's just fine. That's only for you to get to the payment that you would like to have. If the approval is limited and you have to do that, well, you might want to talk about it a little bit earlier in the process, but in most cases, you don't have to introduce that until the tail end of the negotiations. Okay.
All right, that was our last question for now.
Perfect.
Great.
So getting the most for your trade-in, and as we discussed earlier, if you did the research early on, this step is a lot easier. Okay? So as you begin to discuss it with the dealership, after, as Steve said, you got to a number on the sales price, we can start working on your trade. So they are going to want to obviously appraise your vehicle. And we do recommend having multiple appraisals. And if you went to CarMax already, you already did that step, which makes it a lot easier. You have that piece of paper in your back pocket.
Yep.
Don't introduce that until they start talking numbers.
Yep.
Okay? And then they're going to come at you with, how much you want for your trade? If we get you 5, will you?
Don't say a word.
Yeah, just what's your best number is the most I would give.
I would respond with, I'd like to hear your number.
Fair enough. Same premise.
I'm not going to lead with my chin.
So, and what I would say there too is don't throw a ridiculous number at them, but start above what you actually want for the car. So if you're looking for 10, hey, I want 13 grand.
Yep. That's
It's realistic. If you go too out of range, just like with asking the sales price to come down, they may tell you to have a good day.
Yeah. If you want $10,000 off on a new car or $10,000 more for your trade, they're going to consider you not to be a serious buyer and
Try to sell someone else a car.
shake your hand goodbye.
Yeah. So,
I'm sorry, Pete, go ahead.
So there's also the option of selling it privately if you don't want to go through that part of this negotiation process with a dealership. So the first thing you would need to determine is how much is it going to cost me to pay off my auto loan. Obviously, you would do that by contacting a financial institution and pinning down all your final costs. Once you have this information, along with some of the research we did earlier, you can begin to determine what you would need, you should expect to be able to get for the car. You can do this by looking at the market,
Right.
looking back at the metrics we discussed, and comparing it to the CarMax appraisal if you didn't bring your car to the dealership you're buying from.
We can also go on cars.com and so forth and see what they're selling for there as well.
Yeah, seeing what the market.
Kind of like you would in the real estate world where you pull comp houses, you pull comp cars. And
absolutely.
as well.
And keep in mind, trading it in compared to selling it privately, you may lose that tax incentive.
So people understand that part because that's a really important part, Pete. I'm glad you mentioned that. The tax incentive, this is one of the few times that we're not burdened with being double taxed. And if when you trade a car in, if the car is worth $10,000, they don't calculate the tax on the new car until they subtract that $10,000. So that's $600 that you don't have to put out towards sales tax. So when you're determining to sell privately or not, you want to estimate that in as well in determining whether you want to do that or not. So one more thing I'd like to hear about this, Peter, or one of the many things that I want to hear is the some of the fears and some of the things you should be cautious with selling privately.
So a major thing we've been seeing recently is fraudulent checks, as I believe me and you've discussed.
Personal checks or
personal predominantly. I believe we've heard examples of certified checks as well. Okay. So I personally would not release my vehicle nor the title of that vehicle until all cash is cleared with your bank and confirmed.
So what I've done, and I've sold quite a few cars privately as well as professionally. Especially the last car that I sold, I actually since the person buying the car had an account with TD Bank, I went with them to TD Bank and had the teller actually hand me the check. And from doing that, I know this check is good.
It's real.
Yeah, they didn't cut the check or, you know, in a back room of a print shop somewhere.
Printed it in my basement.
It's a legit check, and I'm not worried any longer about it being fraudulent. One of the other things I always recommend to people is to not invite people to your home, and try, if at all possible, do not meet them alone. Meet them someplace at a Target parking lot, Wawa parking lot, or whatever's convenient for you and convenient for that buyer as well. But you know, be safe and you know, kids, don't send them off on a test drive by themselves. Your car might not come back.
And another thing is be ready to draw up a sales contract if the other individual's financing the vehicle.
Right. Okay. So we're almost done, but there's still some very important business to handle. So when you're at the dealership, in most dealerships, you've sat with the salesman, you sat with the sales manager, and they say, okay, we're going to take you to do all the paperwork now, and now you're going to meet the business manager, or what they refer to as the finance manager. And what happens here is where they're going to draw up the bill of sale. They're going to draw up, you know, they're going to try to swing you over into their financing, where they make commission on the money, and so forth. And you have to understand how this works. You're going to be pre-approved by Ardent at a very low rate. They're going to want to try to beat that rate, and it's really just a shell game that they're playing at this point. We are here as your credit union. We're here to give you the best financial advice possible. And there are going to be times when manufacturers have incentivized rates that we're going to recommend maybe you should take that instead of ours, because that's what we do as your credit union. We're looking out for your financial well-being. At the same time, we want you to be smart going into these situations and understand exactly what their motivation is. In many cases, when they get approvals from banks, they're marking that rate up a couple %, and that's how they're compensated. So we're here to help you through that part. But you want to also take that bill of sale and you want to review it. Make sure that selling price is what you agreed upon when you sat with the salesman and the sales manager. Make sure there's nothing extra on there except for tax, tags, and document fee. If they start talking about delivery charges, if they start talking about paint and fabric treatments and dealer prep charges, tire and wheel warranties and things like that, tell me you want all those things removed from there. Okay, so review those numbers and review them well. Have a calculator with you and do the math. Make sure everything adds up the way it should be. Most credible dealerships are not going to have an issue there, but it doesn't mean they don't make mistakes. So, you know, it's always best to check the math. If there's a warranty that you would like to add on, you're somebody who appreciates that and helps you sleep at night, by all means, consider it. But remember, that's negotiable as well. So take a close look at that, and we can talk about that privately on a one-on-one conversation if you'd like to do that. And from there, assuming everything went well there and you've signed and they've given you keys, now you want to go around the car and do a final inspection. Do not leave that dealership until you've checked all the tires, you've checked the paint, make sure there hasn't been any scratches or any other misfortunes happened up in the detail shop. Make sure that everything's the way it's supposed to.
And that the spare tire and any tools are in the car along with the owner's manual.
Right. If it comes with the spare tire. Some cars don't.
Or the inflator kit at minimal.
Right. Okay. So here's another option. Rather than doing all this, you can leave the driving to Pete and I, and we would be more than happy to help you through the process. We do a concierge service, an auto buying concierge service for our members. The service is free to our members, and it is our pleasure to help you and answer all your questions. The service is customized with each individual because each of you are going to have different questions and different levels of need. You know, some people just have a couple questions answered. Some people really need to be helped all the way through the process, including having one of us negotiate the price for you. Every deal is different. Every deal has different results because they own the cars for different prices on the used car market, and we're also in different times right now as well. But we will do our best to save you as much as possible. Okay? Now, do we have any other questions, Lisa?
Yes, we do have some questions that are coming in, Steve. So our first question is it a disadvantage if you do not have a trade-in?
Not necessarily.
Oh.
It's another avenue that a dealership can make profit. So it's advantageous in your direction in the fact of it's one less thing to negotiate. That would really be my biggest thought.
Yeah, not having a trade makes it a little simpler.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, and if you're comfortable holding your ground, it's not a setback either. It can actually, add value or equity. The positive equity could make a difference in the numbers for you.
Yeah, but it does simplify. You're right.
What do we have out? What else do we have?
So the next question we have is this summer a good or bad market time to buy a 2 to 3 year old sedan?
First of all, did everybody hear the thunder that I just heard? Okay, so 2 to 3 year old sedan, Pete. How many are out there?
It's a tough market regardless of what you're talking about. It's a volume factor because it's not there, which makes it harder to negotiate because the supply is so down comparatively to demand.
Yeah. If you have extra cars in your driveway or in front of your home, it's a really good time to sell them. And
just like homes.
Just like homes. It's a hot market right now. If you're not under pressure to buy right now on the used car market, you might want to reconsider hitting the market just now. If you're going to hold off a little bit, wait for the market to settle down a little, and the inventory to come back, by all means, you might save a little bit by doing that. But at the same time, we'll do our best to help you through the process.
And the other factor that is, when is it going to recover? You know what I mean? There's no necessary end in sight yet.
A crystal ball is not very clear just yet.
Yes, that was going to be the next question, Steve and Pete. When do you guys anticipate or think?
It depends on what end of this factor is coming into play. And Steve can attest, I've been trying to research it and trying to make predictions because I knew this was an inevitable question. From the chip shortage perspective, it sounds like 2022.
Explain the chip shortage.
So, just like a lot of things, microchips stopped being produced in volume for a while during the early pandemic stoppages. That had effects on the technology industry, phones, cars, and
video games.
You name it, what doesn't have a computer chip in it. So everybody all of a sudden needed computer chips again all at once. Well, they didn't make them for 6 months, just like we didn't make cars for 6 months. So there's just been a trickle effect. So a lot of industries are seeing price increases, shortages, a multitude of different factors. Mm-hmm. And dependent on whose projection you're listening to, and I'm not looking to make my own because it is definitely not my industry, but it sounds like the chips might not be caught up until 2022. So it could go that far. They may find alternative avenues. I'm not sure of an exact answer. I wonder how long the demand is going to be the high factor. So it might also decrease all the pressure from the opposite end where demand kind of diminishes because a lot of people have, for lack of a better word, panic bought in the last year.
Right. Yeah. And so some people are just as they have with their homes, just become content with what they have as well and just drop out of the market. So that was a very evasive answer. Thank you.
Yes, I tried.
Our next question is, what are your thoughts on electric cars?
Awesome. I love it. I love the idea that we can plug in and hum down the road and not put any pollutants into our atmosphere. And the technology, initially I thought, this is going to be like driving a vacuum cleaner. but it's nothing like that at all. They perform, they're efficient. I'm looking forward to seeing the pricing come down on a lot of them, to where we can, we can all relatively afford them. But I'm anxious to one day have my first electric car when, like I said, when the pricing comes in line.
I agree with you, except for the infrastructure. It's great for a local commute car at this point. They're very fun to drive, surprisingly, but the infrastructure to drive from here to, let's say, Montana.
Yeah. At the same time, there's also websites that'll guide you through to Montana and help you to figure out where to charge up. So.
But you also add quite a few miles, time. It takes you 5 minutes to fill a gas tank. It takes you 4 hours to recharge a car.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
it also costs you $500 to fuel it to Montana.
Yeah, but if you don't have a Tesla and free charging systems, the cost per mile is not as dramatic with some of these private electric charging stations. So again, it's a great premise, and not to completely contradict you by any means, but the infrastructure is not there, and as the technology grows, the cost should inevitably come down. So
that's what I'm hoping for is to see it come down on the car and the charging station.
Yeah, so I don't want to be an early adopter. Thank you for everybody who has been, but you know what I mean, with time, I think it will be a very viable thing as the technology and the infrastructure and just the whole electric vehicle environment.
I've read predictions that by 2035 it will be predominantly electric.
They said that about hydrogen too, so we'll see. I hope you're right, but again, there's been predictions.
Yeah.
All right,
Great
our next question, sticking with the electric cars for a second, do you think the buying process and negotiating process is easier since you can pre-order them?
I don't think that has an effect at all, personally, on a pre-order comparatively.
If you're trying to buy a Tesla, you're not going to negotiate at all.
Yeah, if we're talking Tesla, did it say Tesla specifically?
It didn't say Tesla.
Okay. If you order a vehicle compared to buying something off their lot, frankly, at least when I was a sales manager, and I believe I did a little more than you did on the new side, correct?
Right. Yes, you did.
I was actually less likely to negotiate with you because I am going out and adding additional service to this process to get you exactly what you want.
Mm-hmm.
So more work, more time, more likely that you are not going to complete the transaction.
As a buyer, that's more reason to check a couple dealerships before.
Absolutely.
Before committing.
And I've seen it from this side of the fence as well, that people are a little less likely to complete the transaction, from the purchaser's perspective and also from the dealer perspective. You're not going to get quite the same discount.
Okay.
All right. And another question, what are your thoughts on a hybrid and just replacing the battery?
Do you want me to go ahead?
Sure, go ahead.
So replacing batteries, and speaking of technology evolving, the costs have come down because you are starting to see aftermarket replacement batteries. One off the top of my head is I believe Borg-Warner makes replacement batteries for a lot of hybrids now. If you can do it yourself and you're comfortable with it, it's whatever the cost of that battery is. And depending on what car you have, how big of a battery pack, because even within a model, the battery pack sizes can vary. If you can do it yourself, it's the cost of replacing a battery. How you have to go about that and where that battery is located, good luck. Some are under the floorboard, some are in your trunk. The trunk ones, like in a Prius, they're a fair amount more simple to do if you're comfortable dealing with electricity.
So an estimated cost would be what, $5,000 to $8,000 on?
Depends on the car. You know what I mean? And like a Kia.
What would the range be?
I've seen the batteries themselves be as cheap as $2,500 for a set. The batteries plus labor, or if you can do it yourself, like I was saying. I've seen the battery packs themselves on like some of the newer tech be as up into the close to 10,000 range. They do vary dramatically depending on the type of battery, because there's quite a few different ways they're the word I'm looking for, the materials they use.
Gotcha.
Nickel.
Whether or not they're recyclable and
well, the lithium ions compared to the CAH, I forget what the other one is, but there are different compositions of the batteries which will affect costs. There's quite a few things that come into play in that question. I think of hybrids? I'm a little bit more comfortable with hybrids, going back to the infrastructure conversation, compared to going all electric yet.
You think though do you think the fuel economy of a hybrid is efficient enough to justify the extra cost?
What type of hybrid are you talking about? Because there's the plug-in hybrids,
Right.
where it runs strictly off electric until you run out of electric, and then you have a gas backup, or generators as they're actually called. Or are you talking about a true hybrid where it's gas?
I'm thinking of the true hybrid where it's a combination of gas and.
Are we buying new or used, and what's the difference? Again, it's a loaded gun question. The plug-in hybrid makes more sense to me, as you know, I naturally as Steve can attest to, I naturally plan for the worst. So at least I have that engine still, and I'm not stuck on the side of the road if the power grid's down for a week.
Gotcha. Okay.
All right, and we do have one more question. And our guest is asking if you could elaborate on how the concierge service works, and is it just for new or used cars, or do you do luxury cars?
I'll take this one. It works very well. No, seriously. So the quick history of how this started. I came to work with Arden 5 years ago, and from a dealership in Langhorne, and as a sales manager, used car manager. And when I got here to help with the auto lending team, I started getting asked a lot of questions. You know, what about this? What about that? And you know, is this a good price? Is that a good price? So forth and so on. And it just morphed into being more and more of that. It became frankly overwhelming, helping different members through their car buying process, as well as coworkers here. And it got to be so great, and we saw such great value in it, being able to take the sting out of the car buying process for our members, that we brought Pete on. And Pete worked with me at that same dealership in Langhorne, and I asked him to come over and join us, in which he thankfully did. And he's nonstop, and then I pick up his overflow as I do other things as well. And we try to help as many people as much as possible to go through the car buying process. The process is free. It doesn't matter if you're buying a used car or a new car. You know, we'll answer questions for leasing. Pete's a little bit better with that because he was involved in new car leasing at the dealership, where I was strictly on used cars and not doing leasing. But I still know enough to answer most questions in that area too. But anyway, we'll help you with finding cars. We'll help you negotiate the price. We're going to help you figure out what that trade value is without being able to see it. We are limited and to some degree with answering that question, but we'll still help you with it. And we'll recommend where to go to get the best deal. We have some preferred dealers that we work with. They send us members and loans, and we in turn send them. So it's a three-way win triangle where you're getting the best price without going through hours and hours of negotiation. The dealership is finding a deal that they didn't have before, and Arden is going to, of course, have another happy credit union member, and most likely the car loan that helps keep all the wheels turning here, and kind of the reason why we woke up this morning, right, Pete?
Absolutely.
What did I miss on that?
A good way to kind of sum up the concierge program in a few words is consumer advocacy. We're here to help you make a stress-free, informed, clean purchase process. We try to avoid as many of the pitfalls as possible. We try to steer you towards cars that aren't majorly problematic. Can we answer every question? Of course not. But we try to take as much of the guesswork out of it for you as possible.
There you go. Way to sum it up. And that's the last question?
Yes, that was our last question. And on the screen, we do have Steve and Pete's contact information if anyone would like to get in contact with them or work with them to buy their next car. So Thank you, Steve and Pete, for providing us with some great information, and we would like to thank everyone for attending tonight. There will be a short survey sent out via email, and we would love to hear your feedback to help us improve for future workshops. Our next workshop is titled Posture, Get It Straight, and it will be held on Tuesday, June 8th, and we hope you can join us. Thank you all, and have a great night.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Take care.